Hello, everybody, and welcome to another great episode of My EdTech Life. Thank you so much for joining us on this wonderful day. And wherever it is that you're joining us from around the world, thank you, as always, for all of your support. We appreciate all the likes, the shares, the follows, and thank you so much for engaging with our content. We really appreciate it because you know that we do what we do for you to bring you some amazing conversations and amazing guests, as you will see in just a moment, as I get to introduce these two wonderful gentlemen that I have had the pleasure to meet probably about 2 years ago. And I remember just hearing a little bit about them, having them reach out to me, and then all of a sudden they magically pop up, just two of them at TCEA one year, and you're looking around seeing like, who are these guys with orange pants and these blue shirts, and who are these guys, and just getting to meet both of y'all, and then just telling you like, hey, go talk to this person and go talk to this person. So it's been great and wonderful, and so I'm excited to welcome to the show Eirik and Frikk from Curipod. How are you gentlemen doing today?
Great. Thank you so much for having us.
Yes, I'm excited to have a great conversation today. There's definitely a lot to talk about. I know in this past year, it has been just a lot of great success that I have been seeing posted on socials about this amazing platform. And I definitely want to talk a little bit more about that, and we'll get into that deeper. But before we get into that, let's go ahead and just start with a little brief introduction and then what your context is within Curipod. And so we'll start with Eirik. Eirik, tell us a little bit about yourself for our audience members that may not be familiar with you just yet.
Yeah, I'll assume you haven't seen any of the Curipod courses because if you have, I think you've seen my introduction a few times. But as you said, my name is Eric, and I'm one of the co-founders of Curipod. I'm currently the COO. And for those of you who haven't met me before, I typically say I was born with a Hermione reflex. In a classroom, it looks a lot like this. Yeah, I just loved school. I had a fantastic time at high school. As you heard from my accent, both me and Frikk were from Norway, and I got to go to one of Norway's geekiest schools where I got to found a Harry Potter club and get like 400 out of 600 students to join it. I got a principal in on it, teachers in on it. I just had the best time in school. And then after school, I got a scholarship to move to Mozambique, where I worked as a teacher. And then I got back to Norway. And my first year in uni, I met Jens. So Jens is our third co founder. And he was just one of the smartest people I've ever known. So I was like, okay, I'm going to work a lot with Jens. And we worked together for 3 years. And at the end of those 3 years, I learned that Jens had originally dropped out of high school. And I got incredibly curious into why, because I'd never known anyone who dropped out. I'd never known anyone who considered dropping out. And it was the first time in my life I reflected on what happens to the classroom when I do this, how much it increases the threshold for everyone else to participate. And that's kind of when the first idea of Curipod was born, was just like, can we make a tool that just lowers the threshold for everyone else to participate? And Jens introduced me to Frick, and we three have been building Curipods together ever since.
I love it. Thank you so much. And Freak, could tell us a little bit about yourself too, as well.
Yeah, so I'm Frikk, also from Norway, as you might hear on my accent, and I'm one of the co-founders and CTO at Curipod. So that means I kind of lead the team that builds Curipod, so program and design kind of how the product and the platform is working for educators. And I'm a kind of an old friend of Jens, our third co-founder. So I was there when he dropped out of high school, and that kind of really stuck with me for a long time. And I think that's kind of sparked my deep passion for solving some really difficult problems in education. And myself, I was more of the guy who kind of did very well, never kind of really excelled, but like pretty decent. And I discovered in university when I was studying computer science and design that most of my lecturers had never really been telling me why I needed to learn this. And some of the really difficult subjects, for example, this math subject that I had in university, they failed to kind of we went through a whole semester without them kind of telling me why is this really important to learn and why can this be super super interesting even though it's super geeky and really difficult. And turns out that math was basically now the foundations of the math that is used in all AI, machine learning, and large language models, the LLMs that now powers ChatGPT and all these super cool products that are popping out every day. And so, yeah, those things kind of really brought me into education, because I think there is we need to help everyone get their whys to follow their passion.
Yeah, you guys hit on a lot of things that kind of segue into the meat of this conversation, what we're going to be discussing. But before we get into that a little bit, I know just for our audience members that are listening here, I know Eirik and Frikk were talking a little bit about Jens and his experience. And you're talking about how much better sometimes that experience is when you're able to raise your hand and ask the questions and ask the why. And one of the things that I know I often have discussed and talked to a lot of educators about is it seems like in education, what we see is we know that the teachers are that content expert and they are sharing that content. But it's very rare to see, and not that it doesn't happen, there are wonderful educators out there, but sometimes it's very rare to see a classroom where there is discourse, discussion, the ability to raise your hand and ask a question and have that question answered. Because I think you two hit on something very important, the importance of the why. Like, why is this happening or why is this like this? And getting that explanation to continue to have that learning experience and understand what it is that you're learning as you're discussing with your classmates and having it make sense. Because, like Frick, you mentioned how your professor, you had that math class and you're like, well, what is this for? How am I ever going to use this? But it wasn't until later that you're like, oh, okay, this makes sense. But had I known the why at that time, maybe, and I'm not saying that you didn't put any effort into it, but maybe you would have been like, oh, here's the real world connection and build that enthusiasm and so on and so forth. And that's something that is very important. And so that kind of brings me into some of the things that I do want to discuss with you all as far as Curipod and the platform. So, Eirik, can you tell us just a little bit, just briefly, what is Curipod and how it can enhance the learning environment within the classroom?
Okay, so to describe Curipod in one sentence, we typically say feel the buzz of 100% participation with lessons and activities powered by AI. So what does this mean, right? To me, it means that Curipod covers the whole journey from creating a lesson with activities to delivering them and bringing them into the classroom. So in contrast, like there are a lot of amazing AI tools out there, and a lot of them are doing a lot of different stuff. Curipod is very focused on one thing. We help you build a lesson with activities and content, and then we help you deliver that lesson in a classroom. And the delivery, I think a lot of people come to Curipod for the creation of the lesson, right? It's the magic of AI. You tell Curipod what you're teaching, and Curipod builds your lesson. And don't get me wrong, that's great. But the real magic is in the delivery. All the activities in Curipod we've designed based on kind of experiences from the pedagogical style in Scandinavia, where they're really great at bringing kind of the student voices into the classrooms. So everything is designed just to lower that threshold of participation. And I think we have a very strong opinion in Curipod that technology, as I see it, is really good for lowering the threshold of participation, right? It makes it safer for everyone to participate. But I also believe it's not worth that much if you're not able to transform that online participation into in-classroom discussion. And that's what we're doing with the activities in Curipod. We're lowering the threshold, and then we're bringing it back into the classroom. So we're creating conversations, and that buzz you feel in the classroom when just everyone is, it's not crazy engagement, it's on task discussion, and that's what we're creating.
Yes, and that's something that's very powerful because you've hit on a couple of things. I know recently in a couple of episodes we talked about amplifying student voice and lowering that threshold many times, and I'll speak from my experience, even having students that are emergent bilingual students that come in and may not feel very comfortable maybe speaking or sharing. And it's not that they don't know the content, it's just that they feel self-conscious in maybe the pronunciation and things like that. And so having a platform or being able to give them a tool like I did back in when I was in the classroom, giving them a Chromebook, giving them the option to present, creating a Google slide or creating a graphic and explaining that graphic and going in depth, you do still see that the student has mastered content, or also you do get a little bit of their thought process where you can immediately engage the student independently and maybe in general without singling anybody out. You can adapt the lesson and fix any misconceptions as you're receiving answers through the participation process. So I like that the platform, the delivery of it, as you mentioned, the teacher can create a lesson, or if they already have a lesson that they have, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You're delivering it in a different way where now you're checking continually for student engagement, giving them the opportunity to share, whether it's, hey, you can verbalize it if you feel comfortable, or maybe not too comfortable or a little shy, you can go ahead and type it in. But that feedback loop, I think, is something that is amazing that I really do enjoy. And like like I mentioned, I have seen it in action in some of the classrooms in our district, and the students having the ability to share with their peers and share with the teachers has been something that has been great. And like you mentioned, there is that buzz where the students are speaking, sharing, and again, that just reinforces the learning as opposed to some other applications that may be out there that really want to individualize and just put the students and work on their own instead of being
I,
able to share.
I think you're touching on something we have seen that is kind of very close to our heart, and that was during COVID, we got more and more of these student-paced solutions. And that was obvious, right? Because we were all online. But then these student-based solutions are now brought into the classroom, and I very much understand why, right? They solve for differentiation. As you said, you might have some bilingual students, or you might have some students in some other way struggling to follow the content. And these student-based solutions allows you to deliver differentiated lessons to every kid in the classroom, which is, of course, a great thing. Then the problem we're seeing with this is that it also takes away the whole concept of a classroom where you're a group of students together and you're talking together and you're learning together. So what we're trying to do in Curipod is we're still trying to help you solve for differentiation. Like you can translate the content to any language. You can give some students a bit more time to write. You can give them all the thinking time they need. But the essence is you're working on the same activity. And the magic of this is that when everyone works on the same activity and it ends at the same time, when it's finished, you talk about it. Compared to student-based solutions where you're working on different activities on different times, so you never have that time to kind of, okay, now we're together, let's talk about it. So yeah, that's kind of the essential. Like if you were to kind of boil Curipod down to like one principle, and this is something me and Frikk spend a lot of time, it's think, pair, share. Like that's the essence of Curipod, right? Everything in Curipod is built on give everyone thinking time and adapted content so they can form their own answer, and then pair them or have them converse with each other in some way and share it. So think, pair, share is the essence of Curipod.
And that's something that's very important, like I mentioned, because now you have that discourse in the class, you have that discussion, engagement between two classmates, three classmates, a group. But one of the things, just going back and touching back, and then I'll come back to you, Frick, just to ask you something along those lines. But one thing that you did mention, Eirik, is I know myself as a classroom teacher, having the ability to differentiate is wonderful and powerful. But one thing that I do want to highlight, like you mentioned, is sometimes with many platforms, you've got students working on different lessons based on their differentiation that really don't match up. And then therein lies the issue of how am I going to discuss this as a whole? Because some students were this lesson was, let's say, on the Great Depression, but this lesson over here was on the Industrial Revolution. And so now, how can we have those discussions all together to make sure that there's a proper understanding? And so I feel you on that. And as a teacher, having to go back to each lesson and then having to accommodate or modify, that could be very time consuming. But here, one thing that I love that you mentioned is as soon as you start together, you end together. And as a teacher, I only need to see one platform for responses and then be able to catch any misconceptions or even on the go be able to modify those lessons, which I think is something that is very powerful. So Frick, in continuing with this discussion, as you are one of the major parts as far as building Curipod 2, what are some of the most common feedback that you get as maybe pertaining to this aspect? What are some of the things that the teachers are loving about Curipod, and maybe some of the things that they mention to you that they may not like about other platforms that makes you different?
I think the most common feedback we get is that the students really, really love the voting aspect of Curipod. And the voting aspect of Curipod is basically set up so that you can answer any open-ended question with individual thinking time. And then the students get to vote like on a peer-to-peer kind of style, the answers that might be the most like the best arguments that is being written, or the best use of figurative language in the classroom. And the magic here is that, quite surprisingly, or not anymore for us because we've heard it so many times, the most shy student usually gets the most votes and kind of thereby wins the kind of mini competition in the classroom. And that's really that of course warms the heart of every educator that we talk to. That's one
It's
of the
crazy.
best feedback
It's
we get.
it's the best feeling we can ever have. I just visited a school east of Dallas, and I was doing PDs, so subject-based PDs, and I did social studies and science and math. And then I showed the science teachers how they were working on Newton's three laws of motion. And I showed them how they can just write into Curipod like Newton's laws of motion, and then make the lesson Christmas themed, right? So all the activities was about like Santa sled is going like this, Rudolph stops, what happens, right? And while I was doing the math PD, someone fetched me in because the science teachers, they were close to crying because they had brought this lesson straight back into their classroom just an hour after we made it. And the girl who had never spoken out loud in the classroom, her answer was voted to the top with this voting mechanism Frick described. And like she saw kind of all of the students agreeing with her. And it was just like, what's crazy, and I think what Frick mentioned is we're used to it now because this is what we hear from everyone who brings Curipod into their classroom. It gives a voice to students who normally are quiet, and it brings the classroom together.
Yes, and you're absolutely right. That is very powerful. And I think that aside from that lesson delivery aspect, you hit on a great thing there. The SEL that in the classroom, just being able to open up and, like you mentioned, for a student that does not normally participate, but to be able to participate and everybody gets to see thought process, everybody gets to hear and see everybody's different ideas, and then see how maybe for some of them, like, oh wow, like we kind of have the same idea or we're going in the same direction. But then also for those students that you mentioned, it's so important that they're not participating, but here they have a voice, and to be able to see that what they're sharing is something of value and brings value to the classroom discussion and to the learning, that makes a big difference. Where now you may have stopped a student from getting a negative experience in the classroom that may end up maybe like in that situation where Jens was, where maybe they didn't give them the or give him the opportunity to share, or maybe he was just very quiet and he just didn't have a great experience. But now you're able to open that up to everybody, and I think that is a huge part of the learning. So that's why, going back to some of those other individualized platforms where you're working by yourself, I think that makes it very difficult because, like you mentioned, the importance of having that discourse is something that helps the learning as a whole and as a group, and even individually, just being able to hear and be able to discern answers, which are transferable skills to state testing. And that's something that I want to talk about because I know that Curipod last year, and now, of course, we're coming into January, which we all know in Texas is star testing season. So I want to ask you, all right, how busy are you guys going to be coming this January? And where is it that you're going to be in Texas? Because I know January on, you all are in Texas. So tell us a little bit about what Curipod offers for state assessments, not only in Texas, because I know that you offer more, but tell us about that because starting January, every teacher in every state, that is their big thing, state assessments. So tell us, Eirik, what's going on with Curipod, and is there anything new? How can teachers connect with the content and make sure that they can share that with their students?
That's a cool question. And I would like, now I need to take my Norwegian hat off because Norwegians are inherently very humble. But I would say, like, I think Curipod has the best star test prep material out there. Frikk has led the work of this over the last year. And I think we're really created a niche there because there is something that if you haven't used Curipod test prep material, to summarize it very shortly, we allow you to have the students read and then write their SCR or ECR questions and then get instant AI feedback. And there are some magics here. So first of all, and Frikk can speak to this, but the instant AI feedback on writing just creates another way of practicing STAR, right? Because instead of writing something and then bring it home and grade it and take it back, you can suddenly do the same practice like 3 times in the classroom, and you can do it every day. And that just changes how you work. And then separately, we are also balancing, and here people might disagree, but I think test prep, of course, it needs to be as aligned to the test as possible, right? But what we are trying to do is we're trying to also make it, okay, but how can we tweak it so it's just a little bit more fun than sitting a story test? And then what we're doing there is a teacher can, of course, upload their own reading material and just use Curipod to give AI feedback to their students. But we can also create the texts, which means that we can create text the students want to read about. You might have the numbers, Rick, but I believe 2 of the most popular search terms for STAR lessons are Pokémon and Taylor Swift. I think that's on top. But yeah, I think we're just changing how you're able to prepare for STAR. So yeah, Texas, we're going to be there all January, February. We're all super excited to go to TCA. Yeah.
Excellent. Now,
I
Frick,
think we'll
tell us a little.
also,
Yeah,
if I
sorry, go
can
ahead.
if I can add to if I can add to some of the what Eirik has been saying, I think we've spent a lot of time trying to get the rubric to be super aligned with the TA rubric. And so it's like super closely aligned. We don't know exactly what the TA rubric has been, but we've like used a lot of the previous student responses and the grades for that to kind of make sure that the feedback the students gets are kind of as close as we possibly can get to the TA rubric. So we just want to add that. And in addition, most of the kind of test prep lessons in Curipod also kind of provides scaffolding. And I think one of the things we heard from many teachers and admins in Texas is, of course, there's a big difference being in actual test where it's kind of you get that's when the anxiety hits you, the students struggle, everything in the classroom is being removed, so like the walls are suddenly kind of just blank, and so the environment changes, and kind of being able to really quickly pull into your lesson a quick SCR, like a 5-minute SCR writing practice, kind of reduces this kind of level of anxiety. And the results we've seen from some of the schools, especially in South in Texas, on how they've been using Curipod for preparing for their tests has been insane. I don't know the exact numbers, Eirik, but was it like
22%? So the schools we've been
20?
working with have seen a 22% increase in writing scores on the STAR test. Because, and again, this
so the
comes
meat-
back to being able to iterate. Yeah, meets and mastery has increased by 22%. And it's like they can iterate so much more, right? Because they can give instant AI feedback on their STAR.
Yeah.
And also, and this is one of the cool things that you can do with AI now. And I'm sure many educators out there have seen the student fatigue of using the same kind of running through the same lesson over and over and over again. You see the fatigue, engagement is not there anymore, and then all kinds of crazy things happen. But now with the kind of power of the new technology we're seeing, generative AI in particular, you can capture the interests of your students, whether it's Pokemon, Taylor Swift, like whatever is out there, Fortnite, Minecraft, like all the students have different interests, and you can create these activities, and kind of, even though you're practicing a skill, like a really hard RLA skill, for example, you can still practice it in a subject that the students really care about, and then you get the very powerful learning experiences.
Yes. And I think that's very powerful. And to be honest with you, I know that those constructed response questions are create a lot of anxiety, and within school districts, even depending on the systems that they use, because I know that there's a lot of districts out there that'll do a data point assessment, which is like a little mini practice, like say, hey, in this 6 weeks, this is what we have or need to cover. And then they'll include a short constructed response, but they do not have something that can give that immediate feedback. It'll be the teacher needs to take all of those. Let's say maybe if they're self contained and they only have one class they teach all day long, maybe, okay, it'll be 27 that they'll need to go and read. But there are some schools that I know that they have a rotating schedule. So then the ELA teacher has maybe 90 that they'll have to go and grade and then give that feedback. So imagine how much time that takes, like you mentioned, Eirik, to like the teachers having to take this home or doing it within a window. And then by the time they give the student the feedback, the content has been forgotten. And then when do they get to practice that again? So I think one of the things that I love that I mentioned is the delivery aspect of it. And Eirik, you hit on it very well too. The fact that they can reiterate or iterate many times. So as soon as they submit something, they get that feedback and immediately they can say, okay, these are some of the changes that I need to make those changes. Okay, maybe let's do another round. And you get that timely feedback right away within that classroom or that class time, which helps significantly not only the teacher overwhelm and but also that student anxiety in the fact that they're getting that feedback right away and immediately they learn to take that feedback and say, okay, this is what I need to change and this is what I need to improve on. So I know that that is something that is very huge right now, and I know that's something that even we see some struggles within our district. So I'm glad that there is an option out there that can really alleviate some of that also as well. But like you mentioned too, just the delivery, being able to be aligned with the STAR exam and having a different way of learning the content in an engaging way, because sometimes you see the teachers that have the document camera and they're teaching straight out of the book, or they're teaching just up in the front of the class with really no discussion. But here you get whole class participation, and that's something that I think is very important. And that's why the numbers that you mentioned as far as the increases in some of the districts that you've worked with, having those higher increases in writing, but obviously probably in the content area as well, is because of the delivery aspect, the discourse, and the ability for the teacher to immediately modify or fix any misconceptions and find those trouble spots. And I think that is a game changer for sure. All right. So, like you said, you guys are going to be here in Texas. And I know that February, or actually late January, February, we know we've got TCEA coming up. So, what are y'all's plans for TCEA? I know that there's going to be definitely a lot of Curipod presentations, but any other plans for TCEA, or maybe hinting at anything that may be coming soon through
Oh,
Curipod?
we can give you some hints here. So for instance, we are going to spend a lot of time in Texas, just for everyone in Texas. Like, we're bringing most of the team over to TCA. We're doing regional conferences. Reach out if you need anything. We also have a program open for anyone who wants to host a PD on Curipod. Just email us and I'll meet with them for 30 minutes and train them in person. And then we'll send them a gift card to buy some snacks for their teachers. But I think what would be super interesting is to also share a bit about, like, what's the biggest things on the Curipod roadmap for the next few months. And we have some incredibly exciting updates coming out in hopefully mid-January. So for everyone who have used Curipod before, Very easily explained. You log into Curipod, you click Get Lesson, and then you write whatever you want your lesson to be about. You'll tell Curipod, I'm teaching water cycle in science, and then you get the lesson. And this lesson is good. I mean, everyone has used it as we've described it. They get that in same kind of classroom experience. We're launching an update mid-January, and I believe the quality of those lessons, it will increase by 10 times maybe. I mean, I've seen the previews, and it's incredible what the product team has been creating right now. So I'm so like, I kind of want to see, if you've tried Curipod before, what you have seen so far has been not good compared to what you will see January 15th. So if you have been wowed by Curipod before, get ready for some incredibly exciting lessons. If you haven't been wowed by Curipod before, go back January and test it out, because I'm so excited to launch these updates.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say, Eirik, I wouldn't say that what people will see there right now is not good. It is good. But now with what's coming, it's definitely going to get
It's the
10x,
only way to
20x,
describe
100x.
it's the only way to describe how much better what's coming is, right? Because it's not that it's not good, it's just that the difference is so huge. Like,
Yes.
it feels like, I think both me and Frikk, since we're working so hard on it, it feels bad to not have
Yes.
launched it yet, just because, it's so good.
Yes. And now, Frikk, I know that the pressure's on because you're working with the product development team. So I have to ask, is it going to be ready to roll out in January? Because the pressure's on. But I'm excited. I want to hear your thoughts as far as what you've seen. I know Eirik described a little bit about what has been there and what is coming, because you do work with that product development side. So tell me, what are some of the things that you're most excited about?
So what we've seen is that we've seen a rapid increase and rapid improvement of the kind of underlying AI capabilities. And every time one of these kind of big AI companies launch a new model, it unlocks new possibilities for us in the education space. And in particular, what we've seen is the power of the LLMs and what kind of lessons they're now able to create is like two magnitudes, like 100 times more powerful than it was just a year ago. Like, if you think about it,
Maybe also mention the really cool things you're working on like paragraph reading and translation. That's something I think would be, that's some, like, Frikk is working on some really cool stuff there.
yeah. So going back to some of the things that you will see in Curipod in the early 2025 will be a much powerful lesson experience. So the kinds of lessons that you can create, whether it's kind of inquiry-based learning, gradual release kind of lesson templates, if you want to do more provocative style lessons, if you want to do more content, like, it's going to be all in there, and it's going to be much more powerful across all the subjects. And it's just going to be easier and easier for you as an educator to kind of get the lesson that you actually want. Like, most of you guys have probably in one way or another tried ChatGPT, and sometimes it gives you what you want to want to see, and sometimes it's really hard. And our team is working really hard to help you describe what you're looking for, so that we can actually give it to you and of course connecting all the things so that it makes really good sense from a pedagogy perspective, and kind of tying into all the insights we have about what makes students engaged. So that's going to be the improved full lesson and the lesson experiences, and where you can enhance your existing lessons. The other two things that you will see coming during the spring will be a much more kind of delightful way for you to work on passages. So for all RLA, ELA teachers listening to this, you'll see a much better way to work with passages and practice all the skills you need there, whether it's citing some evidence when crafting an argument or writing an informational passage. The passages will be much more powerful. And for all teachers, and we know there are quite a lot of you out there who have multiple kind of English as a second language or English language learners in your classroom. And we will be launching an update that allows you to take whatever lesson you have and kind of individually translate it on the fly to meet those English language learners so that you can all work together in the Curipod way with the pedagogy that you want.
I love it.
So improving all of our emergent bilingual support features. There are some already, but yeah, they're going to get this huge upgrade.
That is huge. And I know that a lot of teachers everywhere are definitely going to be excited and they're going to be elated to hear about all these updates and definitely try it out. And looking forward to that 10x, 20x content improvement that will be coming. And that's something that is great too, that I must commend, is that the way that you take user educator feedback and you go back and you see like, okay, how can we better this for this case, and willing to learn from your users is something that is very important, as opposed to giving somebody what you think they need as opposed to what they truly need and want. So thank you, gentlemen. I really appreciate the work that Eirik, Frikk, Jens, and the rest of the team are doing to just bring the Curipod way into the classrooms as far as lesson delivery, providing discourse, doing the fun, engaging activities in that think, pair, share aspect. And I think, like you mentioned, definitely helping lower the threshold for anybody in the classroom to be able to participate. So I commend you all. Thank you so much for everything you do. But before we wrap up, I definitely want to end, and I put those questions up. So hopefully you guys got to look at the questions in the invite. And I know, Eirik, you've been on the show before, so you're familiar with the last 3 questions that I normally ask all my guests. So hopefully you guys are ready. So I'm going to start with Frikk right now. So Frikk, I want to ask you, as we know, every superhero has a weakness or a pain point. And we know for Superman that kryptonite was one of those pain points that kind of just kind of weakened him a little bit. So I want to ask you, Frikk, in the current state of education, what would you say is your current edu kryptonite?
Yeah, I had a thought of it. And I think for me, it's going to be kind of the absence of movement, actually. Just sitting still so many hours of the day is just crushing. Like you need blood to come into your brain to work on difficult things or learn new things. And so really for me it's the absence of movement, both from what I see from education, but also very much in my personal life as well.
Excellent. Great answer. Thank you. That's very unique. First person I hear talk about that. Eirik, how about you? In the current state of education, what would be your current edu kryptonite?
Oh, I had a hard think like what's on my list, but I think in general, just how much we are forcing our students into testing, and it's not something teachers do, right? But it's I tying back to everything we do in Curipod, I know from my own experience, I learn the best when I'm curious and I'm trying to explore something. So yeah, to me, it's just how can we make that so much easier to bring into the classroom.
Nice. Sparking curiosity. I love that. All right, Eirik, starting with you, question number 2. If you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
And I think that's just very easy. It's smile. It's just smile, exclamation mark. It makes my day when people smile, and I try to bring a lot of energy and enthusiasm to every meeting I go into.
Love it. Thank you. Frikk, how about you? What would your billboard have on it and why?
So I was thinking about, first of all, we don't have a lot of billboards in Norway, so I had to Google what is a billboard and how does a billboard look like. And of course,
when you come to Texas, you see a lot of billboards.
Yes. And so I realized I've actually seen quite a lot of billboards. But on my billboard, I would basically have a huge classroom, like the biggest classroom you've ever seen, with like 100 students sitting individually, like on like a very square and structured way, and with like a big text on it that says "Got curiosity?" ? And then Curipod on the bottom half.
Nice. Love it. All right. And the last question, and we'll start with you now, Frikk. The last question is, if and this could be anybody in mind, it doesn't have to be anybody in education or anything, but if you can switch places with a person for a day, who would it be and why?
So I have two persons that I would really love to switch place. I'm not sure if I would survive that day, but the two persons, they sort of do the same thing. But a small shout out to some of the amazing educators we're working with: Renee Bernard in Willis and Claudia Garcia down in Rio Grande Valley, Brownsville. I would love to trade places with you guys so I could kind of just be a teacher for like a whole day and see kind of the madness and the everything that goes on, from everything that goes perfectly and the students that really enjoys going to school to the craziness that we all see it's happening. And I think that would really help me kind of understand like what you guys are dealing with every day.
Oh, that is a great answer, Frikk. And to be honest with you, I would love for a lot of administrators to do the same thing too. For one day to switch places and follow a student, no laptops, no phones, nothing. Just sit with
Yeah.
a student and follow them the whole day and see what it's like to be a student and maybe think about, like, hey, you know what? Maybe we need to kind of start changing things a bit. So that's a
I
great
need to
answer.
plug. I need to plug one thing in there. Just this is something. Some of the coolest thing we've done this year is one of the engineers on Frick's team. His name is Pranav. He's fantastic, and he's not only a software engineer. He's actually also a mechanical or an electrical engineer. And he spent a few days building a new Wi-Fi router for the Curipod office, which we call the classroom. And basically, what it does is it takes in our high-speed office Wi-Fi and it scrambles it and makes it kind of the quality of a Wi-Fi you would get in a classroom, so that every time we test Curipod in the office, we actually do it on realistic kind of how would it look in the classroom.
Wow, that is amazing. Wow, that is wonderful to know. That is okay. You caught me off guard there, but I think that that is something useful. And like I mentioned to you, the thought process behind this. I mean, you're covering a lot of angles, and thinking a lot of. You're thinking about a lot of things that many others may not think about because, like I said, they're more worried about, I'm going to give you what I think you need, as opposed to, I'm going to give you what I know you're asking for, and we're even going to emulate the way it may work, or think about the way it may work within your setting. Thank you. That is amazing. Okay, Eirik, now to you. Who is one person or persons that you would like to switch places with for a day, and why?
Anyone on a long hike. That's like it's the one thing I love working with Curipod, but it's a lot, right? I like we're working many hours every day. It's a long time since I took a lot of time off, and I just love being out in the woods. And that's kind of the one thing I really feel like I miss doing a lot of. So yeah, anyone stuck in the wood for like 2 weeks, I'll switch place with them.
Oh, nice, nice. All right, guys. Now I'm gonna throw a curveball at you. This is a bonus question, and I just thought about it right now. But because you have been very present in Texas, so I'm gonna start with you, Eidik. What is, out of all your visits in Texas? Let me ask you, what is your favorite Texas dish?
It's
Oh, that's
it's an
easy.
easy it's easy. Like any tacos you get down in the Rio Grande Valley, it's like yeah, I'll go back there for the food any day of the week.
Perfect. Excellent. Now, Frick, how about yourself? What is one Texas meal that is your go to or your favorite?
So my favorite Texas meal, I got it in Austin. It was actually gluten-free tacos.
Oh, that was
Like
good.
those were the best tacos I've ever eaten. Not like anything
Nice.
else. So
Excellent.
tacos for me as well.
Awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much for answering that bonus question. And like I said, because you guys have a heavy presence here in Texas, I mean, I know I saw Eirik here for the AI Summit conference that we had here at Region One, and I was just like, Eirik, why don't you all just move to Texas, just be residents here, and it'd be great to have you all here close by. But thank you, gentlemen, for all the work that you do. And again, my biggest takeaways here are just how you are improving Curipod, taking teacher user feedback, and the way that you are continuing to grow and really polish those tools that teachers are asking for, not only for state prep, but for lowering the threshold, like Eirik says, that I absolutely love, and engaging students all together in class and discussion. So thank you so much for the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
All
Thank you.
right. And for all our audience members, thank you so much for tuning in and checking out this episode. We really appreciate it. And we ask you, please visit our website at myedtech.life, where you can check out this amazing episode and the other 305 episodes. And I promise you that you will find something specific for you that you can sprinkle onto what you are already doing great. So please make sure that you visit our website. Make sure that you follow us on all socials at My EdTech Life. We are on all platforms. And also, if you haven't done so yet, jump over to our YouTube channel, give us a thumbs up and subscribe. We're trying to start 2025 with our goal of getting to 1,000 subscribers. So please make sure that you give us that like, that thumbs up, and then that way our videos can be pushed out to all of your friends and through all the wonderful algorithms. But as you know, always from the bottom of my heart, thank you for all of your support, because we do what we do for you to bring amazing conversations into our education landscape. And my friends, until next time, don't forget, stay techie.